is straight talk with no chaser. It gives the people a voice, empowers you with a choice. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. She provides a platform of growth and gives a dying people hope. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser.
Welcome to the Straight No Chaser Show. This is your host, Rhea Ray Harris, and I am so grateful to be here with you this evening. Tonight I have two lovely guests that are going to discuss actually the two causes of the month of October.
Yes, ma'am.
One being breast cancer and the other one being domestic violence awareness. To my direct left is the Blue Lady,
Blue Lady in
Ms.
the
Talitha
building.
Wallace. How are you this evening?
I'm good this evening. Thank you for having me.
And to her left is Ms. Luva Doris. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for both of you being guests on the show. Now, for people that are not aware, and I don't know how you wouldn't be aware, October is both Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Let me give you some statistics before we get started. For breast cancer, about 1 in 8 United States women, which is approximately 12%, will develop invasive breast cancer over the course of their lifetime. About 40,000 women in this country this year are expected to die from breast cancer, although the rates of death have been decreasing since 1989, with women under 50 having the greater number of decreases. And these are attributed to, hopefully, treatment advances, earlier detection, and increased awareness. For women in this country, breast cancer death rates are higher than those for any other cancer, with the exception of lung cancer. Besides skin cancer, breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among women here. And about 85% of breast cancers occur in women who have no family history. The most significant risk factors for breast cancer are gender, being a woman, and age, growing older. And what we tend to forget is about 2,600 new cases of invasive breast cancer are expected to be diagnosed in men this year. A man's lifetime risk of breast cancer is about 1 in 1,000.
Wow.
And there are quite a few men out there.
Yes, there are.
So that is a higher number than I think most people really understand. Now, as far as domestic violence, let me give the clinical definition, which is a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. Now, these include behaviors that can intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, terrorize, coerce, threaten, blame, hurt, injure, or wound someone. In the state of Illinois, and for those of you who don't know, I work at domestic violence court during the day. Domestic battery charges include not just intimate partners, but include a parent-child relationship, sibling relationships, biological family members of other natures, aunt, niece, etc., as well as roommates, because you are in a domestic situation if I live with you. So we're looking at physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, economic abuse, and psychological abuse. The age at the time of the first experience with an intimate partner violence situation, let me give these percentages because it's a little surprising. And I'm going to go from the lowest to the highest. 45 and older is 2.5%. 35 to 44, and this is for the first time, is 6.8%. 25 to 34 is 21.1%. 11 to 17 is 22.4%. The highest percentage is 18 to 24-year-olds, which is 47.1% for their first experience with intimate partner abuse. Now, I'm saying all of that firstly, not just for us to be aware, but to segue into what we are discussing, which is how, as adults who have been raised in households where one of these two situations or illnesses were going on, have been impacted. So, Talitha, let me start with you. Growing up in your household, who lived there?
I am a product of a two-parent household. In the beginning, it was my mother and my father, and I was raised as an only child. I do have brothers, but in my household, it was just me, raised as an only child with my mother and my father.
And what did you experience in the household?
Well, first, let me say thank you for when I called you, you was Johnny on the spot. I was like, this is an issue that needs to be talked about, and we got a date together. And I'm so happy to be here during this month because of these two issues that are very dear to me. People who are close to me know that I do not speak on these things at all during this month. I am very standoffish. So, my experience with this issue, I began to see a rise in domestic violence between my mother and my father. I want to say when I was about 5, 6 years old, and my mother is deceased now. Both of my parents are actually deceased now, but when we would talk about it in my teenage years, she would say there's no possible way that you could remember that. And I was like, yeah, I remember you and daddy fighting from wall to wall to wall to wall in the house. I remember those things. I remember him violently dragging her up and down the stairs in our house. I remember the church that I used to go to as a little girl. I remember one night she kind of packed us up and packed me up, and we ran to a neighbor's house who was a member of the church, and we stayed there for like 2 days until she decided to go back. So I understand where it says that you might have your first encounter with abuse, but children have been watching since smaller than me, like
Yes.
5, 3, 2. And these are images where, where I go to church, we always talk about the things that happened in our youth that attribute to the way that we act now. So when these things happen as children, we never forget them. We do things to subdue the memory, or we do things to try to counteract that, not having to say, oh, it'll never happen to us. But in some cases, we push so hard for it not to happen that it becomes that it does happen, and it might take on a different form. I remember a lot of physical abuse. So in my teenage dating years, I would say, well, ain't no man gonna hit me, right? But I allowed mental abuse. I allowed for a man to dictate to me where I could go, when I could go, what I could wear, if he said that outfit is ugly, I wouldn't go outside. Things like that. So the abuse took a different turn, but it was still abuse.
Yes.
And it was a pattern that was embedded since I was a small child. I remember that a key to know when my parents were arguing was my father would turn up the radio, supposedly so I wouldn't hear what was going on. But if I got up to go to the restroom in the middle of the night, they fighting. He choking her, whatever's going on. But that's how I remember loud music. So in turn, now I tell my children, turn your radio down. You can't hear danger. You can't hear danger if your radio is up too loud. Get those earphones out of your ears. Why do you have the music up so loud? You can't hear danger. So people think I'm talking about people snatching them up and down the street. But what's been embedded in me since I was a little girl is there was danger on the other side of the loud music.
The loud music was allegedly going to cover up
exactly
violence.
And it didn't.
And actually, when we talk about childhood to adulthood,
yes,
in a psychological term, because my BFF is a therapist, we also talk about triggers.
Yes.
And so for you, loud music is a trigger,
Yes, it
because
is.
like I said, for other people, they're like, oh, she's talking in general, but you're talking about a very specific
Yes, I am.
reality that you endure.
Yes.
When you said that you remembered at 5 what was happening and could actually detail that
Yes.
to your mother, at 5 though,
hmm
how did you process that?
I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't actually know when I was 5. I didn't have a clue as to what was going on. But as I got older, because it continued, I knew 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that's what was happening. What I later found out is that my father had became a drug abuser. So when he would be high, now he wants to jump on my mother. Okay. But on the other side of that, something that happened within their marriage would trigger him to go back to a time in their marriage. And that way he would just go off over anything. And in his mind, replay an incident that happened earlier in their marriage. So every time he would think about it, now
That
it's
was his
time to fight.
justification.
Now it was time to fight. Years later. And it was times when, I mean, it was terrible, because I remember I was like maybe 6 or 7, and they had been fighting. He bloody, she bloody, and he would have me sit on his lap, and he would have my mother recite to me why he was jumping on her, or his definition of why he was beating on her. So she had to literally go through
What she
whatever
had
happened,
done,
what she had done,
allegedly.
every single time he jumped on her. Every single time he was jumping on her for the same thing. So I literally had to sit there and watch my mother with a black eye, a bloody nose, whatever it is, explain to me, this is what happened. This is the night that it happened. This is where I went. This is the years of the same exact incident being replayed in my mind was what he wanted me to hear. And that's abuse too. So not only was he abusing her, in essence, he was abusing me as well. Absolutely.
And it's definitely child abuse. What I unfortunately have seen in my clients is you're in a violent situation. This is why a lot of people that are in physically violent situations are afraid to report it, because the next move is DCFS.
Right.
And for those that are not in the Chicagoland area, that's the Department of Children and Family Services. And depending on what's going on, your children may be taken from you.
Right.
So a lot of people, because domestic violence victims are not just women, but they are predominantly women, but not just women, take a lot of the abuse in whatever form it's coming, because they do not want to be separated from the children. And not as much in this generation as in prior ones. You also had the situation where the woman was not working outside the home. And so even if I can get out of here with the children, how do I feed, clothe, and house them without his assistance? And he's not going to help me if I leave.
Right. That does have a lot to do with it. And in my mother's case, this was her second marriage. So in the first marriage, it was very, very young. Oh my goodness. She got married at like 16. She had her first child at like 14. So back then wasn't, shotgun. You get pregnant, you marry.
Get married.
So she got married to the first man, and they stayed together a little while, but they were children. You know what I'm saying? So in that relationship, her husband became addicted to heroin, and she decided to leave him. So now the mentality is, here we are in another marriage, and now in his drug abusive state, how do I get out? What are some things that I could do? So now it's like, do you fight for the marriage? Do you leave? And all of these other things are planned. And my mother went to work every day. She was a champ. I don't know how she did it, but she worked those doubles. So she was always at work. Whatever job it was, she was at work. And so to move on from that, we as children sometimes are very judgmental. How come you didn't leave? Oh my God, I can't believe. And I was at home with this, we say crackhead, whatever. He was on drugs. So I was at home with him. So when she went to work, that was a state of depression. We talk about that now because she has blocked out what's truly going on at home. So she's going to work every day like nothing's wrong.
Well, she's actually, having talked to a lot of survivors, that was her freedom.
Yes. But I was upset because I'm
Yes.
what? 10, 11,
And
12,
you are
13.
hostage with him.
I'm a hostage. My money is being stolen. I'm trying my best to go. I'm going to high school, right? So I'm going to high school and I have my bus fare and I got my little money. Okay, cool. So, but there's somebody here that's begging me for $5. The oldest line in the book, if you have ever had a drug abuser for a parent or an uncle or a cousin, I'm going to give you this $10. And then later on that same day, they come back. Let me get that 10 back and I'm gonna give you 20 tomorrow. This is the classic thing if you have had anybody that was on drugs within your family. So I was constantly going through that. So I went to desperate measures as to putting my money in my pants the night before. So then he would go in my pants pocket and find the money. So then I took my pants and put them under the mattress. Baby, I say I snore like two trains colliding. The man would go underneath the mattress and get the money out of the pants and leave the pants in pristine condition. So I'm at home dealing with that. I can't bring my friends home because when you have people in your lives that are on drugs, they do not take care of their hygiene. Your house is a mess. It might be a crack pipe on the table, whatever the case may be. So I had no teenage girl, come on back. Or if I did, my friends would have to wait on the porch and I would have to try to clean up my entire house for a little bit of time with my friends. And then here come my father through the door, crazy, would actually light up cocaine at the dining room table. So I do not know a normalcy of a teenage life. You know what I'm saying? So by the time I thought I was big and bad at this point, I thought I was big and bad. By the time I got big enough and bad enough to say to my mother in such a disrespectful tone, if you don't leave him, I'm leaving. Right?
Mhm.
And we're talking about what age?
15, 16.
15-ish. Okay.
15, 16. I'm smelling myself, you know, I'm leaving, right? So by the time I get enough courage to say that to her, then in turn, that gives her enough courage to say, hey, I'm actually gonna leave. So they did, she went through a divorce and put him out and did all of these other things, which now in my mind, I'm like, man, what if I would have said something earlier? What if I would have said something earlier to her? My life could have been different between the ages of 10 to 14, which are detrimental ages to a young person. Those are your milestone years, your first boyfriend, your first kiss, your crush, finding out who your real friends are.
Transitioning to high school.
Transitioning. Those are
puberty.
Those are very, very quintessential ages. So in that time, you're thinking about a mother and a father. Those are your first examples of what love should be. And so when I remember my mother and father in love, I was like 2, 3, and 4. By 5, it was turmoil.
And you also assumed the responsibility of the decision making,
yes,
of having to stay versus having to leave.
Yes.
As a teenager, put in the position of an adult that should not have been.
Right.
We're going to take a brief break, and when we're going to come back, we're going to have our money moment with H. Cortez, and then we're going to talk a little bit with my dear beloved friend, Luva Doris, and then we're going to really close out how adult children can survive this.
Yeah.
On the Straight No Chaser Show, on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio station.
You were made precious, fragile.
Real tripping now. I'm used to my old mic.
Greetings, Red Ray, and my straight no chaser family. It's your main man, H. Cortez, the one and only financial health mentor to the working class, coming to you with tonight's money moment. Tonight, I want to talk to you about pride. Sometimes we will let our pride get in the way of future success. And what I mean by that is if you found yourself traveling down a path that was leading to nowhere, will you allow yourself to make the course correction and go in a different direction, or will you allow your pride to get in the way and keep you going down that wrong path? See, a lot of us are at a place where we watch what's going on in the economy, we watch what's going on in society. We know that the path that we're on is not going to lead us to financial success, stability, or financial freedom. But for some reason, we're allowing our pride to get in the way of making a better decision, making a course correction, doing something differently, maybe even going against the grain to get what it is that we want in life, a better future, more success, more wealth, or whatever the case may be. So I want to encourage you today. If you're in a place and you see the end of the road that you're on and it's not taking you where you want to go, it's okay to admit that you're on the wrong road. But if you stay on the wrong road, then you would ultimately have no one to blame when you get to that dead-end destination other than yourself. So never let pride get in the way of keeping you from making a decision to change course correct, go in a different direction altogether. So I'm your main man, H. Cortez, financial health mentor to the working class. If you are ready to make that course correction, you're ready to put yourself in a different place financially, then I want you to reach out to my girl, Rhea Ray, ask about our financial success membership, and see how we can help you get on a path to a better financial future. So, you're checking out the Straight No Chaser Show with your main man, H. Cortez, financial health mentor to the working class, and your host, my girl, Rhea Ray. Until I talk to you in next week's Money Moment, I want you to get your money up because you absolutely can do it. Peace out, people.
And that was H. Cortez, my dear friend and financial advisor, as he said, to the working class, telling you some hard truths.
Yes.
And it doesn't apply just to money.
Mm-hmm.
It applies to life. Sometimes we take a path and I've been there myself where I was too prideful to say, I've made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I need some help.
Yep.
I need to turn around. I need to get into the ditch to get off the road,
Right.
whatever. And I paid a heavy price for it. And I know there were people that would have helped. Mm-hmm. But because of me, I didn't do it. Mm-hmm. And that's affected some outcomes. Yeah. And it made the road home a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But don't worry, people. There's always a way out. You just have to decide to use it.
I'm almost ready.
I'm almost there, girl.
I'm almost ready.
Well, Miss Luba, we need to talk to you a little bit because you are the adult child of a parent who had cancer.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I got your back. Breathe.
Right, just breathe in and out, just talk. It's all right.
Well, it was hard. It was really hard.
How old were you when your mother was diagnosed?
Yes, it was my mother. She was diagnosed in 2011. So that means how old am I now?
Don't tell your business, girl. Don't tell intellectual all your business.
But that was 5 years ago.
Yes, when she was diagnosed, it was 5 years ago. So that means I was just 36.
And did you all have any indication prior to that she was ill?
No, we did not actually.
Did she have any indication that she was ill?
No, what she thought was she was a diabetic. That's what she thought. My mom did not like the doctor, so she would not go to the doctor. So anything went wrong with her, it was like a home remedy. Okay, so
Castor oil,
vitamin E tablets, honey for your throat, anything that was pertaining to go to the doctor. No, she would not go to the doctor.
And what happened that made it serious enough in her mind that she went?
Me. But actually what happened was it was my birthday, October the 12th. She was cooking me a dinner. And she slipped out the chair, computer chair. She was rolling.
You mean
around.
Slipped out? You mean just?
She was bending over trying to get a pot out the cabinet. And it was one of these chairs, a computer chair with the roller. And when she fell and hit her breast on the corner of the cabinet. And she told me when I got home from work, well, I fell and I hit my breast. I was cooking you dinner, but it's not done. I'm like, okay. Say like weeks went past, and she told me, no, not weeks, I'm gonna say a few months went past, and she never told me that
that bruising never went away, or the feeling never went away.
Right. She never told me. You know, we didn't think anything of it. You know, she always said her back hurt or whatever when we go shopping. But this particular time on Christmas, my daughter, I know I'm skipping over, but I want to be quick. My daughter, called my daughter Angel back to her room and said, help me put my sock on because she's a little heavy. And she lifted her leg up on the bed. When she lifted the leg, she was like, oh, it was a really loud scream. And Angel jumped, and I'm like, what happened? And she said, Angel lifted my leg the wrong way. We was putting on my sock. So she walked on down the hallway, and we was on our way to her sister's house, my aunt. And she went to step off the bottom step, and she was like, no, I can't go. You guys go. I'm gonna be okay. Just bring me something back. So I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking, right. Something not right. But my mom, she didn't play no games. Don't ask her no questions. I'm all right. Leave it at that. So I didn't ask no questions. Say about a year later. No. I'm sorry, not a year. A couple of months later. Her hip gave out. February 2011. Her hip gave out. It broke.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't even know, but she knew that she was in excruciating pain. And guess what? She didn't want to go to the hospital. So I'm like, Ma, we have to go. You know, my brother had came. We was helping her go to the washroom and everything. You know, it had gotten so bad where she couldn't even get in her bed. So she'd just sit at the edge of her bed and lay back and go to sleep. So I'm like, no, you have to go to the hospital. A couple of days went by. My brother said, Luva, something is wrong with Mama. I helped her up in the bed and blood just started running from her breast area. I said, what you mean?
Right, because that's not like in the realm of normal.
I'm like, what do you mean? I know, don't play with me. He was like, no, I'm serious. He said blood was running, and she had I worked at Jewel Osco, and she told me to bring some Benadine home.
That's it.
And I thought it was for my brother because he had a wound. But all the time, this lady was doctoring on herself. Okay, so she said, I'll go to the hospital, but I'm going to go on your day off. What, lady? Okay, that's what it was. So we went February 24th to the hospital. And we got in an ambulance, and they said, well, do you have any bruises, wounds, anything, open cuts? And she said, well, I have a wound. I have a sore on my breast. So the sore on her breast, she thought she was a diabetic,
and that's why it wouldn't heal.
That's what she thought. So it never once crossed her mind that
It was
it could be cancer because we never experienced this
She's
throughout the
part of
whole
that
family.
85% that had no family history.
Yes. So we get to the hospital. I still haven't seen this wound. She wouldn't let me see it. I never knew about it. When I asked about it, when my brother spoke on it, she was like, oh, it's nothing, I'm obedient. Okay.
But you the baby girl.
I'm the baby girl.
Baby girl.
I'm the baby girl. So when we get to the hospital, the nurse looked at the wound and she pulled it off. And oh my God, the wound was like this big. And I was able to stick like half of my finger in the wound. And she said, how long you had this? She was very stern with her. How long have you had this wound, Miss Doris? She said, a couple of months. I said, no, she didn't had that wound almost a year. And I was like, Ma, like, why did you let this get like this? And she was like, this looked like cancer. I looked at her. I said, the devil is a lie. You will not speak cancer on my mother. And I walked out and I had to collect myself. It was like my whole world had just went
Changed.
upside down. I don't know.
So they kept her in the hospital.
They kept her in the hospital. The hip broke because the cancer
Was eating through.
traveled
Yep.
outside the breast area and went to the hip.
And for people that don't know the terminology, sometimes that's when it metastasizes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm one of the ones that didn't want to know. I didn't want to ask questions because I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid of what they were going to tell me. So I never asked. And my cousin, his name is Roy Summers, he had his fiance. She asked me on a holiday. She said, well, Luva, what type of cancer is it? And are they treating it to cure it? Or are they treating it to prolong her life? When she asked me that, I was like ready to go ballistic because I didn't understand. She's a nurse.
She understood. And there's a difference there, depending on the stage of the cancer and has it metastasized, will determine the success possibilities.
And that's a difference between Luba as an adult. Okay, so if you go back to my story, I only had maybe 2 good years with my mother coming out of a domestic situation to me finding out that she was suffering from breast cancer. So now I am 16.
I'm saying you're in your mid to late teenage
I'm
years.
teenage. I'm in high school. Now in high school, I'm dealing with the
high school life.
High school life. Now I'm thinking I got a little relief.
Because you're no longer in a domestic
with my father.
House.
Right. Now my mother is hemorrhaging. Don't want to go to the doctor. Right? So you listen to mama now. We still scared. You listen to mama. And she said, just go to the store and get what I asked you to get me. And that's what I was trained to do. Until one day, my mother took a very bad fall. She was shoveling snow for an elderly neighbor. And she took a bad fall. She laid on the floor for a day. Wouldn't let me touch her. Wouldn't let me call nobody. Wouldn't let me do nothing. Now imagine daddy ain't there. So it's just me and her.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah.
So now I got to say, all right, I'm going to call. When I call and finally get the ambulance there and finally get her to the hospital, now they say she has tumors on her ovaries. And they look up and they do all these tests. And she has tumors and cancer in her breast. Now she had cancer cells removed in her late 20s. But we never talked about that. Okay, we never talked about that.
Your mother was a reoccurrence.
Exactly. So now the nurses are asking me all kinds of questions. Hey, I'm a teenager. I don't know. Fix my mom. right? But that led me into the education of what was going on at that time. And because she took the fall, now it has metastasized into her spinal cord. So the rehabilitation was not for her to walk again. The rehabilitation was to prolong her life. So in the beginning, it's, oh, you're going to walk, you're going to be fine. But she never walked again because whatever piece of the spinal cord that was smashed and had the cancer cells on it prevented her from walking. So underneath it was, she was literally paralyzed from underneath her rib cage. People say from the waist down. No, from underneath her rib cage, she was paralyzed. 18. I'm in high school. My mother, it was just me and her.
And she's the breadwinner, and now she's paralyzed.
I had to put my mother in a nursing home while I finished my high school education. So while I'm in high school, I'm going to check on my mother at a nursing home before school, after school, and before I went to work because I had to have a job because I'm at home
and
by myself. And I'm still in high school. Real life.
That's real life.
This is real life. And there are some people that are out here going through this. And you have these children. I was an only child. I was raised as an only child. So when the lights got cut off, I had to find a job to get them cut back on. So I was selling cookies, candies, peanuts, peanut brittle in high school to pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point of tonight's show, because firstly, I don't think when anyone is going through anything and they have children that they're thinking, I'm gonna just let my children suffer with me. They're not thinking that at that moment, they're thinking I have to survive this.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I can survive this moment, then I can look at what I can do for my children without realizing that unfortunately your children are still there during that moment.
Yes.
And when you were talking about breast cancer, you may not have been physically suffering with your mother, but you were suffering.
Yes, I was.
Because you were watching her deteriorate and her resistance to help, which at the end possibly cost her her life.
Absolutely.
And time with her grandchildren. In Luva's house, it was her mother, and Luva's children.
Yes.
So she was in the house with her child and her grandchildren.
Yeah, that was really difficult. The way I explain it to my friends is I just feel like the umbilical cord never been cut because it was never a separation with me and my mom.
We talk about that too.
We always stayed together. It was always me and her, even though I have an older brother, but he wasn't
in the house. That's right. Me too.
So it was just me and my...
And that makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely. It was me and my son and my daughter and my baby boy. My brother was there. He stayed there. I'm sorry. He stayed there for a little while and he helped out, but
it was me and mama.
It was me and my mama.
That's it. And that's the thing. I'm sorry. That's the thing that, because we do have to go. But the thing is that what I wanted to come on this show and say was that people who are surviving breast cancer, we are happy for you.
Absolutely.
But you have to be mindful of the people who have lost people to cancer.
Yes.
I can't necessarily say, yay, go ahead, I'm proud of you, because I am still
hurt.
Absolutely.
I am still in pain. I am still going through it, even though my mother and my father have both passed away. I am still hurt. So I take a stand, and it might not be right, but it's my prerogative. I don't want no pink ribbons. I don't want no purple, blue. Don't give me nothing. Don't tag me on nothing on Facebook. No. And that's my choice. The way that I'm dealing with it. And I brought my sister Luva with me because we share a bond. We go to church together. And I know a lot of her story. By the time I came to church where we were, I met her mother. Her mother was the sweetest little old woman. She was too cute. So I felt her spirit when she was going through, because by the time I met them, my mother had been passed away about 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
So I try to be there for people to let them know that, sister, you're not going through it alone. And it's okay to feel any type of way that you want to feel. Nobody can tell you you must heal now. You must be free from this
Come
now.
on now.
You must do this right now. I'm grown. And because of what I've went through, I will take my time in how I feel and how I deal with that hurt. But we support those who are going through. We're there for you. And I wanted to form a sisterhood of people who have lost parents in this tragic fight, because it's a tragic, tragic fight. When you've
Yes,
been
it
there
is.
changing bandages, changing undergarments and things, the doctor's visits where there's just hopelessness, and you still have a ream of hope in your eye. There is someone out here. So if you want to contact me on Facebook, I'm the Blue Lady on Facebook, Talitha W Institute Wallace, you know, and not to say that she won't be there as well, but there is a common sisterhood, brotherhood that nobody is seeming. I haven't heard anybody talking about my story. I hear about survivors. I hear about the pink ribbons. I hear about donations, you know, and donate to the cause and all of the different things. Where is the support for the children who are now adults
Come on, talk about
of
it.
the situation? We have lived through it, and now there is a bond that has permanently been broken. Where is the support system? So I have a friend. She was one of the curvy divas in my fashion show. While she was coming to rehearsals, we have rehearsals for 8 weeks. She was in the process. Her mother was on hospice, and she was still coming to rehearsal. Shout out to Echo, my good friend. And I was like, look, I know what you're going through. If you ever need to talk, talk to me. Inbox me. If I don't get back to you, usually my phone is dead, but that's okay. I'll get back to you, because we need to support each other during that time. The aftermath after your mama passes or that significant father in your life passes can be detrimental.
Well, before we get out of here, I want to say this. There usually is not a group formed until somebody who's walked through the fire decides that it's important enough to make it form.
Yes.
You know, because there was AA
Mm-hmm.
and then there was Al-Anon.
Okay.
Because somebody said, yeah, my husband is no longer an alcoholic, but I went through some stuff while he was an alcoholic, and I would like to talk about that because I'm still struggling with that on my own, because there were some things that I perhaps could have done differently for me that I didn't do because I chose him, or whatever the situation is. So under these conditions, we're looking at the children who have survived
Yes.
a parental death
Yes.
due to cancer, a parental life alteration due to domestic violence. As women, and yes, men too, because men go through too, even though some pretend they don't, and some of us don't want to acknowledge that they do.
Right.
Let's see who wants to have that conversation and say, hey, listen, if we can just do a phone tree,
Yes.
a text or an inbox group, just to say, I'm having a rough day today with this. You know, if there's anyone with a little bit of therapy background to say, hey, let me give you some options on how to perhaps make this load a little bit lighter. Let's deal with it like that, because you know what? If not, we have a multi-generational situation just like everything else, because typically people either do exactly what was done unto them, or they fight really hard to do the exact opposite. And usually it's much better somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
But it's really hard to get there. So for those adults who have lived through a domestic violence household, reach out to Talitha.
Yep.
For those adults who have had to put a parent in the ground due to losing them to cancer, reach out to Talitha, because this is the time to say we're in need of this conversation, because there are a lot of people that are too, what did H. Cortez say, pride filled, to say I need help or I need to talk to someone. And you'll look up and not go to some doctor's appointments.
This is true.
You'll look up and he may not be dotting you in the eye,
Come on.
but he may be taking your money and locking you in the house so you can't go out on Saturday night.
This is true.
There may be some things that you're missing in you because you don't want to acknowledge it because it brings you back to that situation where you were, and it's too painful because you have not dealt with it yet. So I'm asking
Yes.
anyone
Inbox
and
me.
everyone
Yes.
to reach out to Talitha W-Institute
Yeah.
Wallace. And if you can't remember that, you know my name, Rhea Ray Harris.
Yes.
Inbox me and I will connect you, because if we can't heal ourselves, we cannot heal our households, which include our children,
Yeah.
which means we have another generation. So
Got
let's
two more
talk
things.
about it.
Two more things real quick.
Two more things.
Real
yes.
quick. Oh my goodness. So to piggyback off of what you said, because of the fact I went through it from a young standpoint of being 16 years old, I was there for all of the treatments. So if you want to talk to me about a child with a parent going through chemotherapy, radiation, and the battle, they might be losing the battle, where you need to then go in and call people like hospice, things of that nature, churches, even down to funeral arrangements, what insurance will be taken, public aid versus Blue Cross versus Red Cross. Those questions, I am open to help you and talk you through it, because there's nothing like being unprepared when
Absolutely.
stuff happens. So if you are young, if you are older, there's no shame in asking for help. I have, please reach out to Rhea Ray, reach out to Miss Wallace. I'm here for you. Also, I have another event coming up. It is called the Curvy Divas Model Conference. My Curvy Diva brand is the upliftment of curvy women and to promote good fashions and holding your head held high with sisterhood. So we're actually getting ready to have a conference. For those who think they want to break into the fashion industry on the plus size side, I will be having a conference. So please inbox me for that information as well. Yay.
Yay.
Intellectual radio.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you,
Yes.
Talitha and Luva, for coming
You're welcome.
and opening the
Thank
door
you,
to this
Luva.
conversation, because suffering silently is still suffering.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you can have a conversation that'll change someone's life.
Mhm.
And I'm sure somebody heard us tonight and is like, you know what? I need to talk to somebody.
Yeah, reach out to Old Blue. I'm here for you.
Reach out. And with that, we will see you next week on the Straight No Chaser Show on intellectualradio.com and iHeart Radio Station. Dedicate yourselves to the truth, no matter the cost. This is your sister girl, Rhea Ray Harris, signing off. Peace and blessings to everyone in the name of Jesus.
It's straight talk with no chaser. It gives the people a voice, empowers you with a choice. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. She provides a platform of growth and gives a dying people hope. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser.